Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar on providing benefits and work incentives planning support just in time, an introduction to SSDI and Medicare Youth Toolkit. My name is Jessica and I'm a YTAC team member. Switched over to the next slide. So before we get started, just to go over a few things, on the top right-hand corner, you're able to download our PowerPoint presentation at any time. And right below that is our links pod where you'll see our evaluation. We'd greatly appreciate it if you can take about 5 minutes to complete this webinar. It just helps us ensure that we're providing high-quality training and technical assistance. And on the bottom right-hand corner, feel free to participate in conversation with everyone else and place your questions there for our speakers. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to hand things over to Mindy now. And Mindy, you're probably on mute, just so you know.
Thank you, Jessica. I had a great intro and everybody missed it. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mindy Larson with the Institute for Educational Leadership. I'm the project director for the Vocational Rehabilitation Youth Technical Assistance Center. And we thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, the second in a series on this one on the Supplemental Security, Disability Insurance, and Medicare Youth Toolkit. Today we're going to be able to provide a preview and a walkthrough of our latest resource developed by our partners at Cornell University. And we're really excited to have two great presenters who helped worked on developing the toolkit. Thomas Golden, Executive Director of the Yang and Tan Institute on Employment and Disability at Cornell University, and James Sheldon, Disability Policy Consultant in Buffalo, New York, and they will each tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds. If you joined us earlier this week on Tuesday for the first webinar in this series, we just wanted to let you know that there's some similar segments of information related to the use of these online toolkits. And so we just wanted to let you know this is an entirely new webinar, but you may hear a few similar bits of information throughout this presentation. We wanted to ask that you provide feedback on today's presentation by completing an evaluation at the conclusion. We use this to get a sense of the quality and relevance of this content to your professional development, and it provides great input to us in thinking about how we can improve as well as plan future training and technical assistance. There's a link to the participant evaluation in the links box. Continuing education credits, the Certified Rehabilitation Counselors credits are available for all those who attend the entire live webinar today. At the end of this webinar, you should complete the participant evaluation and then also email Jessica Fuentes-Diaz to request the CRCC form and completion certificate. When you do that, please be sure to include your full name in the email. I just want to spend a few minutes introducing you to the VR Youth Technical Assistance Center. So this Technical Assistance Center is one of several supported by the Rehabilitation Services Administration, focused on building the capacity of VR agencies. We are housed at the Institute for Educational Leadership and work in partnership with Cornell University's Yang and Tan Institute on Employment and Disability. Also in partnership with Boston University School of Education, which is our lead on our evaluation activities. And we also engage a variety of subject matter experts from around the country to assist in developing resources and delivering training and technical assistance. The Institute for Educational Leadership is a 55-year-old national nonprofit focused on community-driven equity leadership development. We are catalyzing and building the capacity of leaders and organizations at the intersection of leadership development, education, and workforce development. The Youth Technical Assistance Center specializes in providing training and technical assistance to state-of-the-art agencies and their partners around the particular niche population of young people with disabilities who are not in special education and other young people with disabilities who are more underserved or disconnected, including those who are no longer in school and not employed, those who have been connected to the juvenile justice system, to the foster care system, young people who are homeless, and others who are not students with IEPs. We wanted to mention that today's toolkit, which is the focus of this webinar, is the SSDI Youth Toolkit. There's a link here in case you want to go directly to the toolkit. Throughout this webinar, there'll be some previewing of this website. Finally, we just wanted to mention that we partner with several other youth-focused technical assistance centers. This includes the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance Center, WINTAC, the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, NTAC, the Promise TA Center, and the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth, and CWD Youth. We wanted to make sure you're aware of these additional resources from our partners. All right, and now I'm happy to turn it over to our presenter, starting with Thomas Golden.
Thank you so much, Mindy, and thank you for joining us today, folks that are online learning with us. We're excited looking through the registered participants today. We see some familiar names from Tuesday, and so glad that you've come back to, again, be acquainted with this new tool that the YTAC will be rolling out. I think one of the things that is most exciting to us with these tools is getting to work with folks like you in the field to really better understand what your needs are for additional information and resources that can make your job easier, right? And so the design of the tool today that we're going to be introducing you to and walking you through is actually still in a beta test. So you're getting to see it for a first time today, and we'll be able to actually interact with that site. We kind of consider it more of a soft launch in that we look forward to, over the next few months, really gathering some input from folks that are using it regarding the functionality that's provided there, as well as the sequencing of information. And they'll be giving you some instructions later on in today's broadcast to share with us what your thoughts and your impressions are of this new SSDI and Medicare Youth Toolkit. Now, just like our first webcast that we did on Tuesday, there are some abbreviations that we're going to use that are going to be new to you. While we talked a lot about some of the abbreviations that were relevant to the Supplemental Security Income or SSI program, today we're going to be diving into the world of Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, or sometimes referred to as the Title II program. And so, of course, we have some new acronyms that you can see there on the screen. Probably the ones that are, most important that you hear Jim, my colleague Jim Sheldon, talking about later is Extended Period of Medicare Coverage, or EPMC. We're going to be talking about the Extended Period of Eligibility and Trial Work Period, or EPE or TWP, which are essential to the return to work process under the Social Security Disability Program, as well as this concept of substantial gainful activity, or SGA. A lot of the other terms that we'll be using in acronyms we've talked about in the past, and you can see those listed there: WIPA, VR, VRCs, and YTAC, and what those stand for. But this is a handy kind of slide for you if you have printed it out in advance or have it downloaded to your desktop as we're going through. If we use an acronym that's confusing, to be able to go back and reference that. Today, you're going to learn all about this new SSDI and Medicare Youth Toolkit. There are 10 modules in this toolkit. For those of you that joined us for the SSI Toolkit webinar on Tuesday, the design and layout of the tool is identical, and it's identical for purpose. We, for the last decade, have done some pretty extensive research on developing situated learning tools, or what we call instructional scaffolding, that you make available in real time when people are trying to apply what maybe they've learned.
Hey, Thomas, sorry to interrupt you.
And we know that there are several really essential elements that are most critical for the design of these tools. And so as you're going through, you might have a little deja vu if you're with us on Tuesday, but that's because it's all based on good design and a line of evidence that we've created over time that actually informs the development of these types of situated learning in self-paced training toolkits. Now, there are lots of avenues for you to access training. You know, I know many of you, I see that we've got some credentialed work incentive practitioners on today's broadcast, but we also have some folks that probably just dabble very, very little in the realm of benefits and work incentive planning. And so we know that across participants in today's webinar, there is a great variety of experience. There's a lot of different depth and a lot of different breadth of your knowledge. And so today, you know, we are kind of coming at this from an assumption that people have limited knowledge. And so we're going to talk about this toolkit as in reference to how you can access the information that's in it to really assist you in honing and developing your skills and your capacities a little better. Keep in mind, the YTAC is such a great resource. We so appreciate IEL's leadership here because there is an array of technical assistance that's available to you following today's broadcast, specifically in helping you maybe coordinate some on-site face-to-face training and or distance training that maybe your agency and organization might need to have, but also ongoing technical assistance to really aid you and your organization and or your agency in developing a much more systematic approach for getting access to ongoing benefits and work incentives training and accessing the ongoing instructional scaffolding that's available through this situated learning tool. Throughout the broadcast today, we want to encourage you that if you have any questions during today's broadcast, we are so delighted that Mindy's helping to moderate this session, and she'll be reviewing those questions as you enter them into our Q&A box. And Jim will be intentionally pausing at certain points during the presentation to allow Mindy to ask you some of those questions. We'll also take more questions at the end of today's broadcast, time permitting. But if you don't get your question in, if we're running out of time, which sometimes that just happens, we want to encourage you to send any additional questions that you might have to us via email at y-tac@iel.org. Again, that's y-tac@iel.org. That's also the email that we would welcome any feedback that you would have on the tool once you start using it. You can also send that feedback to that email again, which is y-tac@iel.org. So let's talk about, and for those of you that were with us on Tuesday, for the next couple of minutes, you might tune out or sing a song in your head because you've heard this, but for those of you that are joining us new, we want to talk about why situated learning, like this toolkit that we're presenting today, is so important to practice. Several years ago, we began doing research because what we noticed across a variety of initiatives, systems change initiatives that we were involved with here at the university, is that there was never an end of training that was available to people on how to do different things or how to do old things that we've done in a new way. And what we've observed over time is that training people on how to do it often isn't enough, because what we saw was that people would go back to the day-to-day, retain about a third of what they heard in the training, but then lack the ability to put it into practice. And we refer to that as the knowing-doing gap, right? And we've all had that experience. I'll be the first one to confess, you know, I've spent my life going to benefits and work incentive planning training. Jim Sheldon was one of the first people to train me in this area. And I swear, as long as I live, I'm never going to retain everything that I need to know in this field, even though I've dedicated close to 30 years of my career to supporting the return to work of SSI and DI beneficiaries. And so tools like this are so critical because what it provides us is an instructional scaffolding so that after we leave face-to-face training, we have a resource that we can go to in real time when we need information, or maybe we're questioning what it was we heard in the training, or we're not recalling what we heard, or how to put it into practice, a resource for them. And so situated learning is a theory of learning on how individuals actually acquire professional skills and translate that new knowledge into practice. And it's a matter of creating meaning from real activities. You know, if you're like me, you've sat in a training before and, you know, somebody's presented a concept and you're left scratching your head going, now, well, what does that have to do with my job? What does that have to do with me, right? And so a lot of times what we need to engage in, rather than just having information spewed at us, is a process of enculturation, whereby we emphasize the social cultural settings and activities of people within those settings. And so what that's about is making sure that you, as soon as you're off this webinar, have access to a resource when you're getting ready to interact with that youth with a disability who may receive Social Security disability insurance, and you're sitting across from them at your desk and you're not remembering what all the work incentives are, or you're forgetting what comes first, trial work period or extended period of eligibility, and when can you get back on real easy. This is what that tool is for. It's when you're back at your day-to-day and you're struggling with how you translate this into practice to affect better outcomes for the youth and their families that you're providing services to. And so this situated learning tool, this just-in-time toolkit, actually recognizes that we want to support you in applying this learning in your authentic context, doing those day-to-day activities that are so essential to not just your success, but to the success of the individuals that you're serving and providing supports to. What it does is recognize, you know what? Not always can we be the most knowledgeable other in the room, right? I find myself that the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And that's why I'm so happy to have people like Jim Sheldon in my life, or Ray Sabula, who's another Social Security expert, or Edwin Lopez. These are my go-to more knowledgeable others. I know that if I don't know it, I can go to them to get the information. And so when you're developing these types of just-in-time toolkits, you actually work with more knowledgeable others to help try to constitute the universe of knowledge that people need to know and understand, along with the practice of how you change your behavior, how you actually perform and model certain processes. And so that just-in-time toolkit provides you access to experts. Even though you're not going to see Jim or Ray's or my face there, you've got access to experts as well as processes that we try to model for you through the resources and tools that we provide. And most importantly, what it provides you is this great scaffolding that's around you that doesn't require you to know every single thing that you need to know. All you need to know is where you can go to access it, and that's this toolkit. The toolkit, though, also provides you opportunity to really gauge the learning that's taking place for you. So Jim is going to talk about some of the features that we've built into this toolkit that allow you to do some reflection, as well as an assessment of the learning that's taking place for you. And so it's an exciting tool, and I'm anxious, Jim, for you to tell people about it and begin to walk them through it. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Thomas, and I'll check with Mindy and Jessica to make sure I'm coming through okay. Seeing nothing.
Hey, Jim, you're coming through fine.
Perfect, perfect. And I'll just say that at least on my screen, I'm seeing something next to the PowerPoint slide. I don't know if it's meant to be there, but I'll just keep going. And
yeah, our captioner is
the captioner
has
is
logged
working
in.
on setting up right now, Jim.
okay, that's fine. I'll just proceed. So thank you, Thomas, for the introduction, and I'd like to thank everyone from the Institute on Educational Leadership and Cornell Institute on Employment and Disability for all the behind-the-scenes work to make this webinar go smoothly and to make the work product that I give you look better than when I give it to you. What I'd like to do first, and I don't know if I moved us back to slide 20, but we're on slide 21. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, kind of what brought me to the table here as it relates to this presentation. Back in the early 90s, before any of the formal benefits counseling projects started, I supervised a regional SSI appeals unit. Did that for 6 or 7 years, and then was a protection and advocacy attorney doing advocacy in a lot of different areas. And kind of like my friend Ray Sabula, I kind of stumbled into this whole area of work incentives. And beginning around late 1998, as my office, Neighborhood Legal Services, began getting grants, which culminated with the original Benefits Planning Assistance and Outreach Grant in late 2000, we established a regional work incentive counseling project. Was blessed with some very good people there, and stopped doing that work late last year. What I'd like to do first here is give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the toolkits are, how their purpose, and how they're organized. So let me move ahead. First of all, we've got two primary target audiences for this project and these toolkits. First primary audience is the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency staff, the agency vocational rehabilitation counselors, and really any of the VR agency staff that provide direct services to the youth ages 14 and 25. And those are the ages that the YTAC is directed to target. But we also view these materials as reaching VR agency supervisors and managers. And I think all the staff at the VR agency, including the managers, recognize the barriers to work sometimes created by the complexity of the SSI and Social Security disability systems and the fear associated with taking those early steps toward maximizing employment potential through paid work. And I'd like to think that this toolkit series offers up a way for VR agency counselors and our other primary audience, the youth served by the VR agency and family members, to kind of break down those rules into some concrete concepts. What happens when I go to work? Are there some work incentives that I can avail myself of to make it less likely that I'm going to lose cash benefits, Medicaid, or Medicare as I tiptoe into that area of work, in many cases with part-time employment, moving toward full-time employment. In addition to these two primary audiences, I'm basically going to say it's anybody else that's on this line I've noticed people have signed in from school districts, from any number of agencies probably within the states that serve a primary population of people with disabilities, and certainly benefits planners, anybody doing this work. So hopefully as we go through and talk about VR agency staff, this is really meant to benefit all of you folks. Not exactly sure what I just did. Okay. So what you see on slide 23, and we're going to go live to the website in a couple of minutes here, is a snapshot of the modules that are a part of the SSDI and Medicare Toolkit series. And I am not going to try to read them to you. They're fairly small on my screen. I think when we go live to the website, it'll be a bit more user-friendly, and I'm actually going to click into 2 or 3 of those modules or mini toolkits to show you how you work your way through them. So let me just click forward the slide. I obviously clicked on the wrong arrow before. A little bit about the purpose behind these. Again, 10 different toolkits. They're designed to promote a better understanding of cash benefits, SSI, Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, and the 2 primary government-funded health insurance benefits that go along with SSI and SSDI, Medicaid and Medicare, and particularly as it relates to youth that are receiving them. How those benefits are affected by paid work, and what kind of work incentives the youth may be able to access to minimize any immediate impact of work on benefits. In a few minutes, as it relates to SSDI, we'll talk about the trial work period and to some extent the extended period of eligibility, ways that allow individuals with disabilities to not immediately lose all their benefits. Sometimes the extended period of eligibility has been referred to as a way to move in and out of benefit status as one's success goes up and down. Hopefully, by using these toolkits, the VRC staff and anybody else represented on this call can work with you to help them make informed choices about work, earnings through wages or self-employment, and how they manage the benefits as they're moving in that direction. We hope they'll help you develop better pathways to greater economic self-sufficiency in support of those goals, and ultimately how to translate that knowledge into practice. When we get to the trial work period toolkit that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, I want to alert people of the importance of, in all cases, trying to link the individual youth with a disability to what's known as a benefits planner or work incentive counselor as they move toward employment. So rather than going through slides 25 through 30, what I'm going to have Jessica do is give me the link so I can take us live to the toolkit website. So if I can share my screen with folks, Jessica, let's go there now. And as I'm waiting for that link to come up, there it is. And if you're like me, you'll want to I'm not seeing. Well, I'm not seeing my
Hi, Jim. It appears to be loading.
It appears to be loading? Okay.
Yeah, we're getting a loading signal.
Okay.
Here it comes.
All set. And what I'm going to do, just bear with me a minute because I want to make sure, okay, it's at 150%, so you folks should be able to see this. When you go to the YTAC Toolkit website, and this one for SSDI, this is what you'd call the home screen. And I won't bother trying to read all this stuff to you, but what you're going to see is this list of 10 modules. And for instance, the first module is an introduction to the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. And as we go down the list, number 2 involves the trial work period. Number 3, work after the trial work period. 4 focuses in on, 4, 5, and 6 actually focus in on different ways to reduce countable earnings when the person is going through the 36-month extended period of eligibility. We'll try to touch on some of that in the next few minutes. Then 2 of the 10 are on Medicare, number 7 and number 8. Number 8 is a way to get money to help pay for Medicare Part B premiums. Number 9 is on the expedited reinstatement provision. And then number 10 is on something known as the optional Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities program that exists in most of the states. What we've done is set these up so that they look similar. Once you've gone through a couple of them, you'll get an idea of kind of the layout, some of the resources within them. So if we look at number 1, which is an introduction to the SSDI program, you'll see on that top screen, we're right now on topic home, which is the most detailed but fairly brief summary of the issue described in the title. The second one is test yourself. And I know Thomas and I have suggested to people, test yourself is something we recommend as both a pre-test and a post-test. Before you start the toolkit review, go in, and most of these are set up as a series of true or false questions. Find out what your present knowledge is. After you go through the toolkit, maybe some of the resources, look at the print and go checklists, go back and test yourself again. And I think you'll surprise yourself that you've seen a gain in knowledge. Resources. Here's something on the Social Security Red Book, which is about a 40-page book that you can get in hard copy. And I think you get ordering information on this link. Stuff about earning credits. Some youth with disabilities are able to get SSDI on their own earnings record. And in fact, in this module 1, I lay out for you the fact that in some cases, very young individuals in their early 20s, can qualify for Social Security on their own earnings record if they have as few as 6 credits. Generally something that could be earned in a little over a year, maybe up to about a year and a half. Length is for somebody to establish a My Social Security account and some of the links to policies. Let me just warn you that I know as I was going through this, and Thomas reminded you, it's a beta version. We want to make sure that all these links are working. And I know that the folks behind the scenes, and I may be contributing as well, will be working to make sure that each of these links goes where it's supposed to and that it's not a dead link. Sometimes that problem is created because agency websites are constantly changing what are known as their URLs. So let me go back And I want to go back to the topic home and just walk you through a few things. Usually what you're going to see at the beginning of any toolkit is the first section that describes the issues in kind of a summary fashion. And you'll notice that this toolkit and the others wind up using a series of headings and either subheadings, or this is really lead-in bold, to kind of let you know where you are. Yeah, I already know about the disability standard, but no income or resource test. Somebody on Tuesday wanted to know if today's presentation on SSDI was going to be pretty much the same as the SSI one. Well, no, not at all, because with SSI, if you go to work, it's typically what I would describe as a ramp off of benefits. Except for those who benefit from the student earned income exclusion, which is very powerful and often none of the income counts at all, usually about half of your income counts so that the person is gradually going off benefits as they're working. We're going to see with the SSDI program, it becomes this all or nothing benefit. So some have referred to it as a cash cliff. But there's any number of rules, and particularly work incentives, that can soften the blow or provide some kind of a safety net in the event that either the work attempt is unsuccessful or the person has to pull back on their work because of disability. Moving through here, we describe what happens after the application is approved. There's a waiting period. There's potential for retroactive benefits. Critically, there's a 24-month Medicare waiting period. Probably not going to discuss too much about Medicare during today's discussion, but Medicare goes along with the SSDI program, but there's a 24-month waiting period for it. And one of our later toolkits in this series goes through a Medicare overview, explains parts A, B, and D, and gives you some information on where to find even more in-depth information on those programs. So moving through, you'll get to 3. Often people, youth will receive Social Security child's benefits before age 18. And that's not based on disability. It's usually just based on dependence, typically on a parent who's either now disabled or deceased. Those benefits often convert to SSDI childhood disability benefits as that young person ages out of the child's benefits around age 18. And that's explained in some detail here. And throughout, you're going to see examples used to try to really bring this stuff home and show how it affects real people. And I mentioned this the other day. Often when we're doing live training, people in the audience, people from rehabilitation agencies will say, oh, Nina, in your example here, it sounds like Dennis from my caseload. Let me ask you a follow-up question. Well, if you've got a follow-up question, you can post it in the chat box, and we'll try to get to that. Here's the section on SSDI benefits for youth based on their past earnings. And I really urge you to read this because you'd be surprised at the minimal amount of earnings needed when somebody is in their late teens, early 20s, to at least qualify for some type of an SSDI benefit on the individual's own earnings record. And moving through, childhood disability benefits based on the youth, the parent's Social Security record. That's going to be when the parent is either deceased or they themselves are qualified for some type of Social Security benefit either retirement or disability, where they're collecting against their parents' record, and now the young person who's a dependent who also has a disability can collect a disability benefit. And again, I'm moving through this fairly quickly just to give you a flavor of what's in these toolkits. I'll spend a little bit more time with the one on trial work periods. And of course, you can't make anything more complicated than it is in real life. Often people move from SSI to SSDI, and they may wind up getting both benefits. And there's a formula which is used in the Tanya example to show how somebody getting an SSDI payment of $600 winds up with a $191 SSI payment. In Tanya's case, it's a reduced SSI payment when she moves from SSI eligibility only to combined eligibility on SSI and SSDI. Continuing disability reviews, really we refer you back to a freestanding toolkit in the SSI Toolkit series on continuing disability reviews. So you can see I'll just use this back to the top function to go up here. And I'll come up for air for just a second. I don't have access right now to the chat line. Anything you want to present out there yet, Mindy?
Thanks for taking a pause, Jim. There aren't any questions so far. So this is just a reminder to everyone attending that you're welcome to share questions now or at any point in time during the webinar.
And I've already showed you test yourself, resources. Let's go to this print and go checklist. And what we've tried to do is create a series of these print and go checklists. In my office, we may have referred to these as at-a-glance sheets, something that you can use as just kind of an at-a-glance snapshot of what has been covered within parts of the toolkit. So here's one on SSDI based on earnings of the youth, credits from earnings needed for insured status. And if somebody thinks they run into a lot of youth that develop, modestly significant earnings records or perhaps very significant earnings records in their late teens or early 20s, this could be something that you printed out. Better yet, you can do what I would do with this, which is block it, copy it, paste it into something like a Word document, maybe even play with the formatting a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got something that is suitable to hand out to people. So again,
Jim, I have one question.
Okay.
Sandra asked, could you use some of this information for adults on the Ticket to Work program for educational information?
And the answer is absolutely yes. What I'm presenting you is, I'm going to say, while we're talking about SSDI, and I'm going to say this is true for Medicare and the Medicaid buy-in as well, that's the 10 toolkits. This stuff is pretty much going to apply across the board. Hopefully in reading it you can tell where I've zeroed in on something that might be unique to youth. But given that the definition of transition-aged youth has been defined up to age 25 on the YTAC grant projects, it was pretty much necessary to kind of straddle that line between youth issues and adult issues. And certainly with the SSDI program and Medicare as a corollary from it, it's only people over the age of 18 that are going to qualify. So absolutely this stuff is going to be useful to adults. Anything else there, Mindy, before I get back and maybe move us into the trial work period toolkit in a second?
Nope, that's the only question so
A couple
far.
more things to mention. The way these are designed, you should be able to get through a toolkit from beginning to end with maybe some perusal of the resource links, going through the test yourself, checking out those print and go checklists in about 20 minutes. Now, if you're the type of person that wants to go in, for example, and view those policy manual provisions, you might find yourself eating up 45 minutes or longer pretty quickly. Policy can be hard to digest in just a couple of minutes. But 20 minutes is the way they're designed, and they're designed in such a way that you can come back to them, and using those headings and subheadings, lead in bold, hopefully these become a reference where each time you go back to them, you don't have to spend that initial 20 minutes all over again. And the other thing is they're designed intentionally to allow you to go through things in some kind of a sequence, particularly, say, the first 6 would be good to do in a sequence. I would do the 2 Medicare ones together. Number 9 on expedited reinstatement provisions, which is for people that ultimately lose their benefits but can get back on if they do so within 5 years of losing benefits because of earnings. You could go to that one after number 6 without going to the Medicare ones. And number 10, it's kind of a freestanding thing on Medicaid under the Medicaid buy-in programs. You could read that at any time, but I think it makes a lot of sense to look at it last. But again, a lot of people on this call may have various knowledge coming into this already, and it may be that the first one you go to is the one on Medicare savings plans, because that's something you don't know that much about. So let's go to toolkit number 2 on the 9-month trial work period. And you probably see something that looks very familiar: topic column, test yourself, resources, print and go checklist. So here we go. And right there, Roman numeral 1, SSDI's trial work period, a brief summary. You know, if you were waiting for an important phone call, it wouldn't hurt to go in here and just, while you're waiting, you can't really go to that next project, try to pick up some of the key information. Well, I'm going to give you some key information in less than a minute. I'll read out loud those 3 short paragraphs that make up the brief summary. All SSDI beneficiaries qualify for a trial work period, or a TWP, offering the beneficiary a 9-month risk-free period to test his or her ability to work. All right. If you haven't looked at that fully yet, let's go to the first poll question, Jessica, and see where people are. See if they already know the answer that I was just about to give them. So poll question number 1. And I don't know if I've got to click back to the YTech seminar. I think you're just going to end my sharing of screen, or maybe I've got to do that myself. Stop sharing. Okay. Here's the poll question number 1. And you're going to enter A, B, or C. So Robert, and I'm going to read you some lead-in to this. Robert is 22 years old. He dropped out of high school at age 17. He started receiving SSI at age 18. He then he started receiving, he then started receiving SSDI at age 20 based on his own earnings record, as he earned just enough to obtain those 6 Social Security credits needed to get SSDI on his own record at age 20. He currently receives a monthly SSDI payment of $620 and a monthly SSI payment of $171. He's worked part-time at an auto collision and detail shop for the past 18 months, but has not earned enough in any one month during that period to use up one of 9 trial work period months. So here's our question. What will happen to Robert's SSDI payment if he gets promoted to full-time work, making $1,500 gross each month, starting in October 2019, and you were to pick out your answer? It's going to be A, he will immediately lose his entire SSDI payment as he is earning more than the substantial gainful activity level of 1220. B, he will use 1 trial work period month of his gross earnings or more than the amount needed for a TWP month for the year in question, and he will keep his entire SSDI payment. Or is it C, he will use 1 TWP month if his gross earnings are more than the amount needed for a TWP month for the year in question, and he will see his SSDI payment reduced by a percentage of his gross earnings. I'm going to give you folks a few more minutes to see how you did with this one. And if you came into this with a lot of knowledge, that's great. Or if you actually peeked at that toolkit ahead of time, and you're able to answer it based on that knowledge, that's great too. So we've got about 50 responses. Let me just give it another little bit. And why don't we stop it now, Jessica, because I'm seeing a trend. The answer is B. He gets to keep his entire SSDI payment, and this will be true for a full 9 TWP months. Okay? So 90% of you had the right answer, which is great. In fact, I caught myself starting to give you the answer before I was supposed to. Let me go back and share my screen. We'll go back to the website. So as I finished reading that brief summary, and I realized I wasn't looking at my own notes to go to the poll question. So looking at, I'm right here now on the second paragraph. Only months with gross earnings higher than a certain level count as a TWP services month, and the TWP continues until the beneficiary has achieved 9 TWP months within a period of 60 consecutive months. When earnings are up and down, the TWP can extend over a period of several years, allowing the beneficiary to retain SSDI payments as he or she progresses toward a work role that's compatible with their continuing disability. In all cases, the beneficiary will maintain Medicare eligibility throughout the TWP. Have to emphasize this last thing. In order to take advantage of the TWP, they have to continue to have a disability, and that meets the SSDI disability criteria. So what we're going to do now, Jessica, is go to poll question number 2. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and poll question number 2 is up there. So this next question, actually the next 2 questions, are taken directly from the toolkit portion that's called Test Yourself. When you read through the toolkit, you're going to see that the SSDI trial work period is a policy providing that the young person uses 1 TWP month each time he or she earns more than a certain amount. So here's the poll question that I've taken from that Test Yourself section. Any month, true or false, any month in which gross earnings are above the substantial gainful activity level for the year in question will count as one of the SSDI beneficiaries' 9 TWP months. True or false? And given the way this is being answered, some of you may pick on this as not a sufficiently or not a properly worded question. We've got about half the responses, so I'm going to stop it there, Jessica. We've got 90% that are saying true. And that is technically true. It's technically true. And I may need to go back to the poll questions and maybe word this a little bit differently. I had written down false, but here's the critical thing to point out. SSA's Social Security Administration is going to count as a TWP month any month in which the gross earnings are more than the TWP level set for the year in question, which in calendar year 2019 is $880. So technically, yeah, it's true that any month with earnings above the SGA level will count as one of their SSDI 9 TWP months, but I suppose it would have been worded better to say they only count if it was above that. 880 is enough to use up the trial work period month. And as outlined in the, we're going to go back and share my screen. No, let's stay with this. Let's stay with this. As you're going to see when we go back to the toolkit, there's a lot more explanation on this. I'm not going to share my screen yet, Jessica. I want to go back now and go to poll question number 3. So there we are. And this next one comes from the toolkit itself as well. So here's poll question number 3. Once the SSDI beneficiary works his or her first TWP month, the TWP runs for 8 more consecutive months whether the beneficiary is working at the TWP level or not. And we've already got 27, 29 responses, 30 responses, and we're seeing a clear trend here. Let's at least hear from half of you before I stop this. Okay, well, let's stop it. Let's stop it. And the answer is going to be false. Only the months where they earn above that year's TWP amount that's been set by the Social Security Administration. So if this is calendar year 1999 and somebody has a summer job where they earn $1,000 a month in July and August, they've used true trial work period months. But that doesn't mean that the trial work period keeps running if they either don't earn anything at all in September, October, November, and December, or say earn only $300-400 a month at a part-time job. Okay? This is a tough crowd. I usually, when I've done anything like true-false questions before training, I usually catch a lot of people up not knowing the correct answers. So this is a pretty darn good audience. And so you'll see the very next section talks about gross earnings needing to be higher than $880 per month, or 80 hours in self-employment can be enough to count as a trial work period month. And just in taking you through this, during the 9-month trial work period, this heading says the beneficiary keeps the SSDI payment no matter how high wages are. I'm sure you're going to work with some people whose first very substantial job is going to be after they graduate from a vocational training program, a community college program, or maybe get a bachelor's degree and get that first job. So I once had a guy, and I'm going to maybe translate this for today's standards. I bet you he was making the equivalent of $4,000 a month in 2019 dollars, and he was just starting his first trial work period month, and he was astounded that he was able to keep his full SSDI payment in his paycheck for those 9 months. It's actually those 9 months plus a 3-month grace period. So very powerful work incentive, very powerful. SSDI payment is never reduced based on earnings. During the trial work period, the substantial gainful activity rule will not apply. Let's do this, because I want to at least also touch on the extended period of eligibility before I turn it back over to Thomas. Let's go to the resources section. And these are going to be similarly laid out. Some of you, particularly those in the audience that may do a bit of benefits planning, will want to take a look at this handbook that's available for the benefits planning query. It can be a great document that gives you whatever information Social Security has collected, in particular to show things like the number of trial work period months used. The only thing that I'll caution you, and it's the old garbage in, garbage out, if not enough information has been collected to populate Social Security's electronic databases, this 3 or 4 or 5 page document may not be totally accurate. Again, you'll see links to the policies on trial work period. I noticed this one, the title is left out. I don't know if that was my fault or if it somehow didn't get translated when this went to publication, but we'll make sure that stuff is corrected. And I realize the links for the Find Help page are not there. It's a great way to find information about WIPA projects. But staying with the idea of obtaining free benefits counseling, if you go to the print and go checklists for this particular toolkit, tip sheet number 1, SSDI's 9-month trial work period, key things to know. No risk to SSDI during the trial work period. Can earn any amount of each month of the trial work period and keep SSDI. Just a nice boom, boom, boom headings and a couple of sentences that, of course, that saying the devil's always in the details. There may be little things that may make it work out somewhat differently for some individuals, but it gives you a good baseline when you come back to it. But here we go. Getting free benefits planning services in your state. And this goes through, I'm not going to, there's a link to the Social Security Find Help website where by following the links you can get information for the WIPA project in your state. But we also explain here that many of the vocational rehabilitation agencies provide funding for benefits planning or work incentive counseling services, either through their own staff or in New York, the agency that I used to work with, we had a fee-for-service arrangement with our state VR agency. Actually, we've got 2 of them in our state, one for the blind. And then last but not least, some employment networks operating through the Ticket to Work program will provide benefits planning or work incentive counseling services. And the idea is you ask your employment network, is that one of the services you offer? Mindy, I'm going to come up for air again as I'm going back to follow the links to just touch on the extended period of eligibility toolkit. Anything in the chat box that you want to pose to me as a question?
So we just have a question from Carmen asking about how long the toolkit link will be available. So we, Carmen, I believe right now, since we're in the process of still making some final updates and taking feedback, we're going to keep it available to just this select group of participants. And so you can go there and take a look at it during this trial period at any time while we are working on the beta version.
Okay. All right, so during the trial work period, 9 months, and what I did not go into in any real detail, just because there's only so much time during this webinar, and it's really not meant to be an overview of any one of these topics. The trial work period is not over until there's 9 what they call trial work services months in any period of 60 consecutive months. So that we've got a hypothetical in module number 2 where somebody picks up those trial work months sporadically over a period of years. So that's the nice thing about it. It doesn't run if you're not working or if you're working below that year's trial work period level. But once they've hit that 9th trial work month, it starts something known as the extended period of eligibility, or EPE. And of course, being the person that really was the initial drafter of this, I'm going to lobby the folks that are doing the final editing to see if maybe we could highlight the subtitle a little bit more, because that's really what this is all about. The extended period of eligibility, substantial gainful activity, the benefit cessation month, and month-by-month benefit suspensions during the EPE. And I'm not going to try to go through all the elements of this particular toolkit because we've only got a couple of minutes. But I just want to highlight for you how this extended period of eligibility works. So we had an example earlier of somebody, or maybe I just intended to go through this one, where somebody gets their first job and immediately works above the trial work period level and eats up their trial work period in 9 consecutive months. That 9th month would be the end of their 9-month trial work period, and unless they go off benefits, get back on through the expedited reinstatement provisions, for the most part, we can say that's their one and only trial work period over these next several years. As the 9th month ends, they move right into that extended period of eligibility. And let's assume they perform substantial gainful activity in the very first month. They still get a 3-month grace period. So there's an ability, when you take that first job earning at the substantial gainful activity, SGA level, there's an ability to keep those benefits for 12 consecutive months, no matter what you're earning. Hypothetical before, the person starts earning $1,500 gross a month, 12 consecutive months, keeping that $1,500, keeping that entire SSDI check. Very powerful work incentive. It's a risk-free work incentive. Okay. Once you get past that 3-month grace period, you go into what I call the on and off period. If your countable earnings are at or below the substantial gainful activity level, you keep your SSDI payment. If they're above that SGA level, which is $1,220 this year per month, or $2,040 for those who are, quote, statutorily blind. Over SGA, no payment. Under SGA, you get a payment. And we know for any number of reasons that a lot of people with disabilities see their earnings fluctuate, which means they may be going on and off benefits. And as we explain in these toolkits, when that's the case, you need to have strategies for communicating with the Social Security Administration, because this stuff does not just get implemented automatically. So I'm going to commend to your reading, after you review topic 3, read and sequence topics 4, 5, and 6. 4 is on using pay time off, things like vacation, sick and holiday pay, to reduce your countable wages during that extended period of eligibility. Bring your wages from $1,500 down to, say, $1,150. You get paid for that month. And you can use a combination of paid time off and something like impairment-related work expenses to reduce countable wages. And then ultimately, you can use subsidies, which are sometimes split between subsidies and special conditions, to reduce countable wages below that SGA level. So I think it's probably time for me to stop, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'll see, Mindy, if there's any questions before we turn it over to our friend Thomas. And I'm not hearing anything from Mindy.
Yeah, we haven't had any additional questions. So again, just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions or even comments related to the toolkit, feel free to use the chat box to share that. We had a question about the availability of the time period for the beta testing. And so we are in the process of beta testing right now and expect that to continue through October. We are aiming to have the beta testing completed by November so that we can have the official launch of the product at that point in time. And so the beta testing,
by the way, I'm just reading.
I was just going to say, during the beta testing, we are welcoming for you to contact us as you are visiting the site and checking it out. If you note anything that you think we need to address, if you have any feedback, we would love to hear from you. We'll have our webinar at the end.
Mindy, I'm not seeing Thomas back on unmuted, and in our presenter exchange, he said they had to evacuate his building because of the fire alarm. I guess I shouldn't laugh.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. Because we never know.
Everything's okay,
I'm
but
quite
he
happy.
stepped away.
I'm quite happy to go through his next slide.
Okay, I'm just moving forward to the training of the vocational rehabilitation counselor staff.
Yep.
Great.
And okay, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm as well versed on situated learning, but this is certainly something that we kind of prepared together. This slide 2032, which is a visual about any number of approaches to training, I'm just going to leave that one alone because I am not Thomas and I won't really do justice to it. But one of the things that we've talked about is the idea of using the toolkit modules as a means of self-directed learning. And you could do it 100% in a self-directed manner. I'm not sure what the VR agency adopted approach is, but I know one thing that was talked about was taking the toolkits, assigning staff to cover 2 or 3 of them at a time, maybe only one, and then gather with somebody with perhaps a greater depth of knowledge to discuss them. I've already mentioned this. I suggest going through the modules in sequential order. But again, there may be people in the audience that have some depth in one area and not in another, or maybe a more immediate need to go into the Medicare ones or go into that Medicaid buy-in one. That's fine. Again, 20 minutes per toolkit is a reasonable allocation of time if say within a work setting you wanted to give somebody free time to do this. And the goal to make this meaningful is to try to complete all 10 modules in a 5 to 10 week period. If you spread it out too much, you're likely to kind of lose the flow of it. And if you're like me, when you start going through the extended period of eligibility, you're going to say, I need to go back and review that one on trial work period all over again. It's probably not going to take you 20 minutes to go back and review it, but you know, the vocational rehab counselor or whoever from among the people that we have here today who's going to be doing this, you can decide whether to test yourself first or last. Thomas and I have kind of come to the conclusion that in the perfect world, you do a pre-test and a post-test. And even, you know, maybe come back and do it again after you've gone through it a second time. Number 34, Toolkit modules and in-house training webinar. A lot of state VR agencies have in-house expertise to do their own training. I'm fairly familiar with the model being used in the state of Virginia. In fact, one of the employees serves as a statewide technical assistance person to those who have fee-for-service relationships with the state agency, if I'm remembering this correctly. If they chose, they could take this toolkit series, maybe even modify it in some way to make it more useful within their state, and let their in-house expert guide the training. Absolutely, they could do that.
Jim, we have
okay.
Catherine asked, so this is going back to the content you were covering, if an individual completes trial work period, extended period of eligibility, and is earning over SGA, what happens to Medicare premiums that were being taken out of SSDI payment?
That's a great question. Let me answer it this way first, just so people know the unstated answer or question. Once they get to the end of their extended period of eligibility, they've already performed SGA at least once during that extended period of eligibility, so that they have that what's called the cessation month and the 3-month grace period. If they perform SGA after that 36th month, they go into what's known as termination status. Their actual benefit is terminated. The extended period of Medicare coverage, the EPMC, can run for a few more years because it's at a minimum the 9 trial work months plus an additional, I believe it's 7.5 years. So that they'd still be in extended Medicare status as that extended period of eligibility ends. Well, if they've been having that money taken out of their SSDI payment, that money is now going to come to them, or excuse me, they're now going to get a quarterly invoice for those payments. Let me just suggest, though, that you take a look going from memory, I believe it's Toolkit Module 9 on Medicare savings plans, and at least make sure that you know whether or not their countable income might be low enough to qualify to have their Part B premiums picked up by your state Medicaid agency. Great question, though. It comes up all the time. Okay, and I'm still not seeing Thomas, so I think his building is still evacuated. So, Mindy, you move me along. Webinar training using outside trainers. Based on what I've heard, you can contact the YTAC project to see if this is training they can do. Every state is going to have Social Security funded WIPA projects. You may want to ask them if they're able to, and again, assuming you're going to want to use the toolkit, use the SSI or SSDI toolkit or both to do some kind of training. And I know, having been a person that oversaw a WIPA project for many years, serving transition-aged youth is a mandated WIPA priority. And certainly collaborating with the state VR agency with the WIPA project can help facilitate reaching the population. So I'm thinking, I'm just looking at where it's, there's one more slide, and then Mindy, I guess I'll give it to you to wrap up. Actually, the only slide is the references that really support Thomas as part of the presentation.
Actually, so, there's one more here, Jim. You and I both were advancing the slides. So there's one more here about just a few more points about the use of the toolkit as an ongoing reference for VR counselors. We really intended for these toolkits to be a go-to resource, quick and easy, as Thomas discussed at the beginning. If the vocational rehabilitation counselor uses it and becomes familiar with the content, then we expect that they are now prepared to identify an issue, to be able to spot an issue, such as maybe this case is where one where the youth could benefit from the student earned income exclusion. We also expect that the VR counselor can go back to the SSDI online toolkit in the 9-month trial work period in Module 2 and walk through those parts of the toolkit that lay out the trial work period criteria. Finally, having the toolkit as an online desk reference will be helpful to VR counselors who can now provide the youth and their family with quality information and referral, selectively share the print and go checklists that are built into the toolkit, and also selectively share key online resources. And we have an additional question. Sandra asked, can other professionals such as ENs take training to provide this type of service to VR centers? So I think, if I understand, this toolkit could be used as a tool to provide training on this to VR centers for sure. So ENs could use it, if that's what you're asking, Sandra.
And I'm going to assume she could be asking a different question.
Okay.
Because I mentioned the fee-for-service relationship that my former agency had with the New York State VR agency. And in New York anyway, there's an annual grant, not annual, there's probably every 5 years a grant application process that anybody can participate in. And certainly employment networks, depending on their background and so forth, may very well in your states be able to participate in the fee-for-service component if it's offered through your state VR agency. I was certainly very encouraged to find out how many ENs actually offer benefits counseling.
Thanks, Jim. So I just wanted to advance this. So we had in there a list of the references for the information presented today. And we wanted to be sure that you know how to contact the VR Youth Technical Assistance Center. We have our email address, y-tac@iel.org. We hope you will contact us at any time with any questions or requests related to what you learned today or other areas of capacity building need that you think we can support around working with transition age youth. And our website is https://y-tac.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. And a reminder to please sign up for our quarterly newsletter if you'd like to learn more about resources and events and stay up to date on news and resources in the VR world. And we also request that you please do take a few minutes to answer a short 5-question evaluation survey to give us your feedback on what you learned and will take away from today's presentation and the quality of it. And that is it. I want to say a huge thank you to Jim and Thomas, our presenters today, as well as Jessica, our host. And Jessica also would like to remind everyone that in order to receive the CRC credits, you must complete the participant evaluation. So she's moved us back to the evaluation slide, so you can click on the link right there. And also, after completing the evaluation, please email Jessica at fuentesdsj@iel.org with your full legal name. The CRC is only available to those who attend the live webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.